Before we get started today, I want to say thank you for every single like, comment, recommendation, and a very special thank you to my listener support group. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End Podcast, please consider checking out the listener support tab on our channel's anchor link. Without you, we would not be able to continue the great work we're doing with these conversations, breaking down boundaries and helping heal each other by sharing our stories, our trials, our tribulations, and how we process them. Let's jump straight into this episode.
Are you thinking about making a podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one, and if I can figure it out, you definitely can too. You can create your own content all in one place for free with zero hangups and even earn money as soon as you get started. Spotify lets you record and edit episodes from your phone or computer so you can go mobile, just like I enjoy to do. My favorite thing about it is that you can create video episodes if you wish and upload them to wherever podcasts are heard. You can even set up subscriptions or, if you're like me, listener support options for listeners to help you grow. I 10 out of 10 recommend the Spotify for Podcasters app. Or, why don't you just step over to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your own podcast. All right, what's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Deep End Podcast. As always, I am your one and only host, Eddie, and I'm so blessed, thankful, full of gratitude, and excited about our guest today. I'm joined by the one and only Mr. Rob. I cannot wait to hear your journey and your story because the work you do now, it is a pillar to us moving forward as a country, to take care of our veterans, to take care of their families, to take care of other human beings in general, regardless of if they served or not. Thank you for your time, my brother.
Thank you, Eddie. I appreciate it. And again, I'm honored to be on your show. And yeah, this may be some of my story, but this is about you shining, and that's who I am. I believe in the acronym TEAM, and that's together everyone achieves miracles, and together we'll do that. So let's let a miracle be in this next hour for those that are listening to us.
100%, my brother. Absolutely. Well, why don't we start from the get-go? What was your childhood like?
Yeah. Well, first off, can I speak my name and maybe just a little? Yeah. So I'm Rod Wittmier. I live in Buckley, Washington. I'm going to be 68 in June to give you an idea of my age, which meant when I was in the United States Army was 1974 through 78. But I'll complete that by saying that in 2008, I took on the mission to end veteran suicide. That's when it hit my heart. I heard that the VA first announced 18 veterans a day taking their lives. I stood up and said, not in my country. And ever since then, that's been my mission. So we'll talk about that, but just want to say I'm a proud Army veteran, and I'm not like I got a friend out there that's a Marine that teaches a workshop for us. He uses the acronym "Ain't a Real Marine Yet." So I definitely believe in that camaraderie and that competition between the branches. So anyway, born in 1955 in Enumclaw, Washington, and the nearest, that was the nearest hospital, is actually a little town of South Prairie. Today, if you've ever gone along the Foothills Trail, which is 26 miles from Puyallup all the way to Buckley, you go through the little dinky town of South Prairie. So that's where, but that was just, I think, for my first year or two. And then we ended up in Ording, which is the next town nearby, which is, the view from Ording every day going to elementary school and walking home. All I could see was the whole breadth of Mount Rainier right there. So that was like my inspiration, just to see that. I'd be walking and all I had to do is head towards Mount Rainier. And I knew I'd, get to my parents' home, living on Varner Street. And, when I went away to the military, all I could think about was coming back to that mountain.
Yes, so, it is beautiful.
Yeah, so I did K through 12, and I'll say something got me fired up because I ended up with absolutely perfect attendance in high school. I don't know how the heck I did that, right? And I was a little pudgy kid, had asthma, so I wasn't good at sports. When I got in high school, I tried a little football. That wasn't real well because the asthma would hit me. And I ended up in track and did shot put and discus. I loved throwing the discus, so that kind of takes me through the K through 12. I'll pause and see if there's anything that you heard.
Yeah, I think that one, I would say that growing up around Mount Rainier. How gorgeous is that? It's one of my favorite parts about going to Tacoma. For my childhood time, I definitely had asthma as well. And sports, turns out, according to my doctors, made my lungs heal and grow stronger. And
Mm.
I really find that in these tough times, that's where we grow the most. When we put our bodies through, you know, exhilarating, difficult things, they give us tools to power through in future things. So I love sports. I think sports are a key component of my childhood and the childhood for my future children as well. I think it's very important.
Oh yeah, just totally, totally key. So, well, as I graduated from high school, something that was interesting in Ording, there was a cable company. It goes to a little dinky town before Comcast cable and all the, so each little town had their own, and they brought on a set of video and tools to allow the high school. I don't even remember how I ended up in it, because I was in shop and doing all that stuff as a junior and senior. But they created like a videographer program where we got to go film the football. I remember on top of Ording Stadium, up there with the camera, we're filming it. I ended up we had to do commercials for the town. And one of my first, I'll say, bad experiences in front of the microphone is I was supposed to talk about the Ording parts store that had a brand new engine analyzer, right? So I walk out on stage, I'm all excited, I'm saying, hey, this is Rod. I'm here to tell you about Ording, the parts center. They got this new engine and now Lazur. I started to laugh. I turned, I walked off. I think that was the last time I was on microphone for quite a few years. I couldn't, the word analyzer just did not come out of my mouth. And so that was kind of funny. Well, anyway, I was away as I graduated in 1973 from Ording High, the Cardinals. I was an Ording Cardinal, and lettered in track and that kind of stuff. Started working. My dad worked for Schaub Ellison, which was one of the Goodyear tire out of Tacoma. Right now, when you go to the Tacoma, and where UW Tacoma is, across from the big train station. Well, that used to be Schaub Ellison Tire Company. My dad had worked there for many years. My brother did before me. I did. I became the air boy. And what that meant is I drove a truck, right? So I got my driving permit at 14 and a half, right? I think I was only 16 when I got that job, and I started driving the air truck, around Tacoma and places. I'd end up servicing, finding out which tires needed to be replaced on the big fleets for Holroyd and all these different companies, which was kind of cool, and then I had the idea, because I was always curious because of that recording stuff about electronics. So I signed up in Portland, Oregon, was the United Electronics Institute. And out of there, they usually took people from there to the FBI and had a great ability. And I started in September, was maxing out everything. I even interviewed with the FBI, and there was several things, I was on the track. And then I went home over Christmas. Now, I had to set back to say, I didn't have the money to support myself there. My parents didn't. And so I ended up, as I went back, I think in like October, I asked my mom and dad if I could borrow the truck and the camper. So I drove the truck and camper back to Portland. And then I said, well, I need a place to plug this in. I found a that I could work at in the evening after school. So I'm there cutting boards and stuff. And then I realized they got a pretty big, wide open door. I went and talked to the manager, the owner, whatever it was, said, if I parked my camper inside here and plugged in, could I be your nighttime security? And they go, yeah, that'd be good, right? So I did that, so I'm living in the camper, using their, facility as a place to be safe and all that, and doing school and just loving electronics. And then I went home over Christmas break, and I got this phone call. The military intelligence school calling and say, hey, can we make you an offer that you can't refuse? Would you like to get, an education? We'll send you through more than 2 years worth of school. You just have to sign up for 4 years. I said, well, that sounds pretty good. Let's do that. So that became the next part of that's the next part of the journey. I'll pause and see if you Want
Man, thinking about military intelligence community,
to,
how critical of a role it plays, you have to be able to articulate every single message properly, every single, I don't know how extensive what your background in that technology was, but when it comes to cryptology and dealing with, SIGINT, humanint, and every single int out there, those are intelligence for the people who haven't been indoctrinated yet.
right?
All those different things, they come together to help with real live human patterns, data, and it contributes directly to war fighting. The Army War College has been using this information for quite a few years, and they keep developing new programs for us to do things like defeat Nazis, do things like understand different foreign powers and how we can counter, act every single action they take. So I think it is extremely important that you got selected because that's a critical role, and this is no
Yep.
joke.
Yep. And it was, at first it was my concern though. I said, crap, I'm going to have to go through physical and all that. And I got asthma, right? How could I possibly do that? Now I knew I wasn't signing up for, to be infantry or anything that it had to be. And I said, well, I hope though. But while I was away at this technical school for several months, kind of my asthma seemed to get a little bit better, right? And well, anyway, so I went down and, went through it all and signed up to become a 33 Charlie. And what that was intercept electronic warfare repair. So becoming an electronic tech to be able to, make those units keep working and that kind of stuff. And so it was in the receiver area. That's what C stands for, is Charlie. That later became a 33S20. They renamed it. I don't know why. I think it's that contradiction of terms called military intelligence, right? But I ended up, as I went into the military, this is where I don't know, I'd have to really just be grateful of my parents. They didn't have much. They clearly drank too much, as most of them did, and smoked too much. But something was there, from my father, I believe, that inspired me. Because as I went into basic training, the first time we got our haircut, we're in uniform, standing there, the unit commanders, they're addressing everybody, and he goes, welcome aboard. This is Fort Ord, California. So this would have been February of 1974. You can remember what it was like back then. And they made the challenge. They said, you're gonna be learning like crazy. We're gonna push you for your limits. We're gonna give you a midterm test. Then we're going to push you some more. You're going to have a final test. Anybody that maxes out those tests, you get promoted. Well, I took that on.
Don't dangle money in front of anybody's face. They're going to get it.
I did. And so I went in as an E1. I found that all the food I was starting to put on weight, in those first 4 weeks, because I was busting tires for Goodyear, the big tires. I mean, we were changing the log loaders. We'd have to bring in the big crane and, clearly 18-wheeler kind of, that kind of stuff. So I was pretty, doing good. Well, anyway, I maxed out that first test. So I went from E1 to E2 in mid of my basic training. And I said, okay. And they challenged us again. And at the end of it, I ended up maxing out the test. So I was promoted to E3. Now, the part that I like the best is that final, they said, okay, you can take leave this weekend when everybody else is doing PT. And I'm sitting there going, I don't have a car. I don't have anything. So I went to the little PX or whatever and, bought a 6-pack of beer. And I walked down to the beach at Fort Ord, California, and just loved it. But I was celebrating all by myself because I don't think anybody else maxed it out. But at that point, I'm getting out of basic training as a private first class, an E3, right? And that set me on the course. I went into tech school. They sent me for the electronics part, they sent me to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. That is, kind of mid-state, not near Boston, kind of halfway out. And have you ever heard of Johnny Appleseed? Well, right next to Fort Devens was Leominster, as somebody call it, or Leominster, and that's where Johnny Appleseed was, right? Historically. But it was the military intelligence school, and I ended up going through the 9 months of the basic electronics, which was cool. And guess what? Top of my class, I'm now an E4. So
Oh
I'm 9 months into the
God.
military, and I've been promoted to an E4. So needless to say, as I got to that unit, I became a corporal, meaning acting as the platoon corporal. And then as that person moved on, I was then the acting platoon sergeant. So here is this guy that had asthma and couldn't breathe, is doing all this stuff and marching everybody to the schoolhouse and, just getting into it. So I did Soldier of the Month, I did Soldier of the Quarter, all that kind of stuff. And somewhere in there, I had met my wife, the love of my life. And I remember, I think I was still in the electronics school, and I remember going out to the pay phone booth. So if you remember, there were actually little glass boxes going back to 74 that people would go into, and there would be a light that would turn on. You'd close the sliding door, and you'd make a phone call. Like I called her and discovered that I was about to be a father. I wasn't married yet, right? But I discovered it was about to be a father. So it was like, that was like, oh crap, that's cool, right? And needless to say, we got married shortly after that. And but just little things happened. I remember being at the electronics school. A lot of the people that were trained there were called diddy bops. Meant they were either language or they knew Morse code and they were being trained in it. While I was over there in that wired cage, because there was top secret electronic stuff that we were teaching, to be able to, make all that work, and guard dogs and all that kind of stuff. So the Army Security Agency, which was what that was, ASA as it's called. If you've ever seen the movie Men That Stare at Goats, George Clooney,
Yes.
Brad Pitt, okay,
Oh yeah.
a little bit like that. I think that was a little bit of a parody about the ASA, or so it was kind of fun. I mean, my hair was down, halfway down my ears as I was, doing. Oh, so because I graduated top of the class, they didn't let me go. I stayed there as an instructor to be able to teach everybody else, right? So I'm, yeah. So needless to say, I made it to E5 really quick, and somewhere in there, I destroyed my back lifting those receivers. But I had an eye. I kept, interviewing and talking to the chief warrant officer, because that's what they do. Is they're usually technical leaders, that whether it be electronics or something like that. So I had my eye. I said, boy, if I re-enlist, I'll be, make E6. Then from there, I got a path to a warrant officer, and that was like, I was lit up, and I could see that, that it was all possible. But with the back injury, compression, I ended up and decided to say, hey, it's time to go be all I could be for my family instead.
Wow.
At that point, I had one child, and I think the second one was on the way. So I'll pause there, Eddie.
That's a serious thing you just said there, right? There's so much to unpack here. First,
Yeah.
advancing so many times. Once you create a foundation of success, it's really, really, really easy and healthy to build upon it. A lot of people go through life not understanding that the second you have that foundation of, I did something really great.
Yeah.
I'm just going to stay here. That hesitancy, that they're afraid to walk into their own light often. And I really, really admire that you kept persevering and going towards these challenges with an open mind and excited about excelling. Being top of your class repetitively is going to always create that solid foundation. If in whatever job field you're going into, I think that it comes down to, one, are you willing to do what it takes to learn and to succeed? And two, how much pride do you have in yourself?
Mm-hmm.
When I was in the military, I ranked up pretty fast as well, because I decided that I would rather study than go out and drink. I would rather, because I was a geo bachelor, so I was separated from my significant other by about 3,000 miles. So you can imagine how fun and full of love and happiness my life was. I was missing my partner 24/7. Only thing I could do to get my mind off her for 5 seconds without missing home and being homesick is studying. So I'd study. Top 2% in the Navy, top 2% in the Navy, top 1% in the Navy,
Right.
for these exams. And I advanced. And as I did that, I just said, okay, well, let me get the warfare pins. Let me learn more about other people's jobs. Let me learn about intelligence community. And it all builds. And as you tap in to your skills that you're creating, you're able to easily teach. Teaching is the best thing I've ever been able to do. Teaching other people about my job, teaching you know, I've been featured in the Navy training manuals. There's pictures of me in it
Cool.
going through training. I was featured in like the news articles back here in my hometown. I was always trying to do things to help others learn. And that's one of my favorite parts about being in the military as a leader is the ability, the opening, this little gap. And you can fill it, but you need to know your stuff. You do need to come with the attitude of I love to help others. And I also want to say that it's amazing that you just said those words, be all you can be. And then you added the important part that is usually not spoken about for your family.
For my family.
Are you caught up in your own individual persona, or are you going to make sure that your family's taken care of before you keep feeding into this idea, which is being the best sailor ever, or the soldier, or Coast Guards? But I don't know what they call people in the Coast Guard, but it, you know, they got a name. They got a
A
name
guardsman.
the guardsmen, yes.
Yeah, maybe.
And of course, even the Air Force.
We
Even
call
if
them
you get a pass,
posties, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I call it puddle pirates. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Deploy past 3 feet and you get deployment pay. Yep.
Yeah.
That's all the deep as the water's got to be. If anything past the swimming pool is a deployment for them. But all jokes aside,
yeah.
yeah.
Two things that show up from what you were saying is, you know, as you're teaching, you know, that really is a gift to be able to, you know, have the lights, it's like the lights weren't on, and all of a sudden the lights are on, or they get it. You know, that was just, I love that part of it, you know, but I also remember, you know, being trained as a technical instructor in the military. We were effectively the commander of the classroom. So if you know a general walks in, you know, without you know someone saying, you know, Ted Hutt, right, and walks in the room, sir, please sit down. We'll get to you in a few minutes. You know, and it was the authority given, you know, that leadership that you know you were there to get a job done. You know, and that just drove my, I'll say, loyalty, integrity, you know, honor, you know, and obviously marching people to the school when I was still in the school versus teaching at the school. Once I got to the teaching, it was a little more relaxed, you know, because at that point I think we had 2 formations a year to make sure they knew that we were wearing the right uniform for that time of year, you know, and they really left us alone. I got up, had to be, you know, in classroom at 6 a.m. and the class was usually done at noon, you know, which means I was home by 1 p.m. You know, it was like this, but it was intense, you know. So it was get up at dark 30 to be able to get there in time. And I remember, you know, getting in Mark's car. He was driving. There was another instructor there. I got in, and you know, it was like April time frame. Allergy season. I determined that, you know, then that time I got a lot of allergies. So I sneezed, and you know, at that point, that was kind of the start of the back. But I actually realized that it was the compression that I was getting. Typically, every day I was receiving the receivers and putting them down. I had to move them twice through a whole lab of like 20 receivers. So this was an 85-pound receiver that I was teaching. So that I calculated when I did my disability, you know, that I was lifting 1,800. I was receiving 1,800 pounds of impact on my lower back all that time. So it didn't, you know, made sense that doing something where I was in a precarious search, you know, like getting into a little Toyota and sneezing at the same time, just took it out, you know, and yeah.
Oh man, that and lower back pain is excruciating. I've gone through a couple car crashes, and the military was not easy on my body. I was in a very physical job, so the old school sailor, bring on boats, drop
Right.
fast boats, you know, all the things. And boatsmates are notorious for the hand-on manual labor that we do, and it definitely weighs on you after a while. So I would say,
for sure.
oh, I feel the pain, brother. I feel the pain. So getting out of the military and being a father, it's got to be one of the most rewarding things. What was one of your major takeaways from that?
Well, first off, I was surprised as I got out of the military. So this was February of '78, so 4 years active, and I remember going, you know, said, well, I better go sign up for unemployment until I figure it all out. And they're telling me to, hey, don't take it, just take your time. Take your time. And I'm sitting there going, I don't want to be on unemployment. I need to go work, right? You know, and so I was in the search, and I found very quickly the oldest electronics company in the nation, which was called General Radio in Concord, Massachusetts. If you remember Concord, that's where the shot was fired that was heard around the world. The Revolutionary War kind of began right there first, and so I was now working for this, prestigious electronics company. So you can kind of hear there was this momentum again, this belief that I could, right? And quickly jumped up the ranks there, and started teaching again. So that I needed that giving, right? So now I'm teaching electronics, and somewhere in there, I'll just say I got to take my new wife home to meet mom and dad, and it was interesting because remember as a childhood asthma like crazy, right? Well, it seemed to clear up when I was in the military, and so when I went back, we introduced. Actually, what I did is I took my firstborn son, so he was probably maybe almost 1 year old, and we somehow had a friend bring us to the house. But mom and dad, they had no clue we were coming. And what I did is I lifted my son up into the front window, right? And I could hear my mom screaming, "It's Christopher! It's Christopher!" You couldn't see us, and then we stood up in the window, so they could see us, and that was cool. So we're there for a few days, and within I think 6 hours, I was rushed off to Madigan Army Hospital. My lungs had shut down. So all through my childhood, it was not asthma, it was a pet allergy, because my mom and dad always had 2 cats, 2 or 3 dogs. The cats would be on the laundry. They love the dryer. When you take your clothes out, you put it, it's nice and warm up there. The cats would be, so it was on my clothes. So when I got away from the military, I really got away from the cat and dog allergens. But, they had me on, my new wife thought I was going to die, right? They shoot me up with epinephrine or all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was, so major allergies, never knew. So for anybody listening that's got children, just listen for symptoms. If your kids are always, that means it's dripping. Why is it dripping? Could be pet allergies. Consider them before the fun of a pet. So I knew that, and I was tested, military tested me. I remember my kid was growing up, and he wanted a cat, wanted a dog. There was a toy back then called Petster. About this big, it was round, it was a little robot. You could program it to go and do things in different rooms, being a geek, right? I said, I could do that. So consider a Petster or something artificial, for your kids, particularly if they get any welts when they get licked or anything like that, but shortness of breath may not be allergy, may not be asthma, more apt to be an allergen, right?
100%.
Yeah, that was kind of, never expected that.
Definitely not expecting that. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that must be terrifying to get rushed to the hospital. Oh my goodness. That's an absolute mess. Well, where did this idea, this notion, this higher calling that you seem to have? You have a tremendous amount of energy, and you seem to direct it towards other people all the time.
Absolutely.
You look outwards. And I think that's one of the main things that stands out about you, about who you are as an individual. And, from our short interaction, I got that right away. I picked up on it. Right. So what happened to make you so set on fighting this battle against suicide?
Yeah. Well, I have to go back as, become that platoon corporal, platoon sergeant, where I really started leading that soldier of the month, soldier of the quarter, where I was able to stand up and really be that for others and be that inspiration, that leadership. As I got out and was working for Genrad for almost 18 years, right? Before I finally, I'll say, convinced them to introduce Microsoft stuff, because they were all always Unix, and next to them was Digital Equipment Corporation, or DEC, used DEC computers. So it was, always a, different operating system. And I said, we could do better. So I started challenging them technically, and I started learning user interface engineering skills. I brought in the guy from I forgot it, user interface something. Anyway, a well-known guru, and I had everybody from software engineering take 2 days off So I convinced the leadership of the company to take 2 days to take these engineers, put them in an environment. We took over the whole cafeteria for 2 days, and they were not doing work, and they were learning about, usability, and usability testing. And if we go off and test this, design it and pay, so these new skills were being brought, and it was kind of neat. So you can kind of hear, I guess I'm always searching for what would make me better and those around me, and saying that tool could make a difference in your effectiveness. So, and that works very successful. So I then, because of that, I got closer to Microsoft. And then I started to realize there's people out there called Microsoft certified trainers that travel around the world, and they teach people, and particularly in the programming or administration of, so Windows, servers and stuff like that, or the programming to program for C# and C++ and, all those things. So I became a Microsoft certified trainer so I could then keep teaching, which meant I left GenRed, and now I'm out traveling around the world working for an independent contractor company, right, that would say, hey, Microsoft needs a C# instructor over here, that kind of stuff. And so that, moved me into where I could do that. And that was just like, to be in front of a class for 5 days and deliver that to them. I made a lot of money. I found that my back was worse than I could think, because it, started to really impact. Anytime I stand still, I can march, I can walk, I can do all this stuff, but standing still compresses the spine, right? So kind of, anyway,
you probably spent a lot of time hanging upside down.
Well, it wasn't until later that my new wife bought me an inversion table.
Oh yeah, that's the one.
That's the one. Inversion table is something everybody, you'll find relief from your ankle to your knees. Now, that doesn't mean hang upside down. That just simply means go from an angle, a 45 or whatever, and do the opposite 45, meaning you're down, but the weight, your head, 11, 12 pounds or whatever it be, is enough to decompress your spine, your ankle, your knee, yeah. So I learned that, so of course I'm telling everybody about, oh, hey, you got to get an inversion table. These will make a difference in your life, it was pretty cool. So I don't know if I answered your question, Eddie. I kind of got into, some of the pieces that just showed up for me. Yeah, pretty excited to be.
Training is essential, helping other people. When I conduct training, I let everybody else around me know that they are valued, because I'm taking time to show them something new or remind them of something they might have just forgot.
Yeah.
When I do that at work, it's a serious morale boost. It's a great way to bring people together to establish camaraderie with knowledge. Information is what human beings strive for. Everything we do is a scientific experiment, or ignoring scientific experiments we've learned in the past from ourselves with firsthand data or from others. So I definitely am all about training. I really do enjoy it. Yeah. Something that Greg Plitt said, I'm going to mess up the quote, of course, but if it's not broke, don't fix it, is a flawed ideology. And it's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. Yeah. Because just because the system is workable, and if it can be approved, then it might as well be as good as being broke. Let's improve. Let's continue to improve as human beings, as a community. We can get rid of things in America like racial division, political division, just division in general. Get out there, talk to your neighbors. I say to her all the time, talk to somebody, break down those boundaries. And I think that training
learn something.
Learn something.
Be open. Use, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should be using those in those proportion, asking open-ended questions of others so that you get to hear it and learn it, because then you can share it with others. So yeah. When you mentioned something and not broke, it made me, so when I was in that military intelligence mindset and electronic repair, teaching everybody that every day, and now had kids, toys started getting broke, and stuff like that. And most kind of, it was something that, I could fix. So I kind of took on, if it's broke, I can fix it. But then I suddenly learned, unless it's plastic. I remember getting a RC car for my son, and the plastic, I'll call it A-frame for the wheel had broke. So, okay, I couldn't just glue it together. So I got out my soldering iron, which is something every electronic tech has. And I melted, basically made a corridor or a channel where I could put a piece of metal in, and then I sealed the plastic with my solder gun. So that didn't last very long. So I still stand in, if it's broke, I can fix it unless it's plastic. So you can kind of hear there's some things in life that you probably shouldn't go there. Like know your limits, and don't be yes to everything, right? Be yes to what you're qualified. And that takes me as a Christian. So somewhere in the journey around 1980 or so, I accepted Christ as my savior, and that took me to a whole new level. And, to be able to, realize that you're supposed to let your yeses be yes and your no's be no. So don't let somebody, when your soul tells you, no, that's not a good thing. Don't let somebody else turn that into a yes, because you'll be out of integrity. You won't put in it, the 110% that you should, so that was so anyway, I'm with Microsoft, I'm traveling around, and then Microsoft has, because of programming and, that kind of stuff, they have this thing called MSDN, which is the Microsoft Developer Network. And there were then regional directors for the Microsoft, development network. And so I was selected to be that for the region of Washington, Idaho, and Oregon. So now I'm in, large locations, showing them, teaching them, how to program Microsoft. And then at that time, the web was really starting to come up. And with it, by the way, the web, most people know it as www. So my family invented that. My brother's name is Wendell Wayne Wittmier. No, just a joke. We didn't, but we were there at that time, because I remember anyway. So with Microsoft, I'm teaching, but now I'm teaching kind of in a volunteer capacity as this regional director. And the last one I remember, we were in the Washington State Exposition Center in downtown Seattle, big convention hall. I had 1,400 attendees. So I'm getting them on. I've got I come in, I'm riding on a skateboard, not a skateboard, I forget what you call it, a scooter. Not powered, but there wasn't batteries back then, just a scooter, but there was a really rad scooter. So I'm coming in, everybody's sharing, and then we gave away that, and I'm up at the top of the stage, just starting to get things going. I got the crowd going, back then. It was tastes great. What's the other half? Less filling. There's a beer commercial. Tastes great. Less fillings. I got the whole.
Start throwing beers in the crowd.
Yeah, there's no beers, but if people were chanting, right, just to kind of get the crowd going. And I had a football, and I said, "All right, so I'm going to throw this football to one of you. You got to be ready to catch it. If you earn this, right?" So I'm back there on the stage, right? I take the football and I throw it. It goes just beautiful, and intersects with one of the beams in the top of the ceiling. And goes the other way. Somebody caught it, but not the intended person, Anyway, it was an experience, again, and a way of allowing me to lead.
Yes.
Right? Allowing me to be there for others, because they all left fired up. They all went, because of the web, I was really introducing at that one what was referred to as Visual Studio, which is the developer tool, and its active server pages, which was called ASP, later became ASP.NET as they built more stuff. And so I did that for quite some time to get all the developers, that knew how to develop web. Like, for example, I taught at Washington State Department of Revenue, because the Department of Revenue, the tax people, they need a lot of technology solutions. So I'm in there teaching them. I didn't do taste great, less filling, but I had other things that I was able to, kind of lift them with. And, extraordinary career.
And they definitely respond better to breaking down those initial things, because a lot of people show up for learning. They're like, oh, this is going to suck.
Right.
When you come in with a good attitude and
yeah.
joke around, interact with people, break down that boundary,
Yeah.
I would call it essential. It's a necessity to do.
It totally
every
is.
Time I trained, I'd mess around.
You got it. Good. You can hear, I don't know if you heard the phrase, the speed of the leader sets the speed of the pack.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
So if you come in inspired, and I'll tell you as we get into it, I just completed, like 5 days with Tony Robbins, right? So I'm just like, my wife and I are on fire. Our lives are transformed. We've got an opportunity to contribute to the world. It's just, and we signed up for the university that he's got, so we're going to be with him for 2 solid years. It's just like, we're just like, I wish we were on a video because you'd see me bouncing and, but it's kind of in that world. So it's bring fun to things. Why not, right? I taught for Microsoft. You've all done Microsoft Office, Word and Excel and PowerPoint. Well, behind the scenes of each of those is a programming platform. Some people may call it a script, right? Meaning the technology behind it, but Visual Basic was behind all of them. So I was in, I think, Detroit. I was brought in by Microsoft to teach, I think it was 200 people, how to program in Microsoft Office, right? So write the code behind, Office Word that could interact with Excel to make this calculation and interact with PowerPoint to create this chart and insert that back into the Word doc. It was kind of that programming. So it is a programming platform. Well, I said, I'll only do it unless you call it Fun with Microsoft Office, right? And they did. So I got there and I'm on stage. Now imagine I'm up on a stage, with a computer platform, and I'm up there, teaching. So, and everybody, it's a big virtual lab. There were 200 computers, right? So 200 keyboards, 200 people. And this is the rush that I got, because I'd demonstrate, and then I say, okay, follow me. So I'm up there going, okay, let's do this. Let's go click here. And okay, we're going to type these language statements, dimension this variable as whatever. The whole room, you can imagine 200 keyboards at the same time going. It sounded like there was crickets, birds, just the whole room is alive with the sound of 200 keyboards. That, again, just a level above, not just outstanding, right? But just an extraordinary experience.
Yeah, having an extraordinary impact on others.
Yeah, really.
You definitely kept that in continuation, of course, because now you have an extraordinary impact on others right now.
Yeah.
So when did you end up making that shift?
Yeah.
That shift to dealing specifically with tackling veteran suicide, right? Because a lot of people acknowledge that it exists. Yep. Hollywood acknowledge that it exists. Politicians love to acknowledge that it exists.
Sure do. Yep.
You're actually doing something about it. Yep. Why don't you explain what the process for that was and what it does now?
Will do. Thank you. So I'll just say in that journey of, looking for me to be better. So our son had gone to the Landmark Forum, Landmark Education, Landmark Worldwide, has trained millions and millions of people across the world in neuroscience, really about the beliefs and the thoughts that you have. Where do they come from, And so we had done that. And in this was January of 2008. In September of 2008, we signed up for one of their more advanced, like a 5-month called the Self-Expression and Leadership Program. And one of the key distinctions in there is you take on a community project, right? So again, this is 2008. I got out in 1978. Back was damaged, never did anything, never went to the VFW because I was not a combat MOS, right? So I always served, basically for me, Massachusetts was my, anyway. So with it, I was not a member of anything. And, so fall of 2008, we're in this, go find a community project. My wife takes on a rehabilitation center for seniors. They brought them love and Christmas and music and gifts and, being with them. I fell across the statistic. This is September again of 2008. The VA had made the first announcement, veteran suicide, 18 a day. And that just hit my heart. I had never heard such a thing. I was, sitting there pondering. I said, how could one of my brothers and sisters of arms possibly be at a mental state, where they would take their lives? And I stood up and I said, this is it. I'm the one that will end veteran suicide. I declared that, and I started to build that. And the project we're supposed to do I called it Vets Meet Vets. I had the idea that there were gray-haired guys like me. I called them seasoned vets, and more recent called recent vets. And I said, what if we built this community? So this is January of 2009. And what I did is I started to interview. I knew I was going to do an event, but I wanted to talk to the mayors. So I lived in Enumclaw at the time. So I went and did Buckley, and I did Black Diamond, and I did Enumclaw, and I ended up hitting 5 different towns because I had chosen the National Guard Armory. I'd been interacting with Pierce County veteran programs and learning from King County, but they weren't on the same page. They weren't talking together, right? So I said, what's in the middle between Pierce and King? Well, the White River that runs right through Buckley. Guess what's right next to that? The National Guard Armory. And I said, okay, that's the place. If we're going to do some kind of rock that, pebble that hits the pond and causes a ripple effect, let's put it right there, right? So all these mayors were interviewed, and many of them would say, oh, you want me to come out on a Saturday? Well, I work, during the week, and I don't know that. And I said, Madam Mayor, or whatever, I said, let me tell you a little bit about those that are in combat and what they experience. It doesn't matter whether it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. They have a commitment. I said, Madam Mayor, this happened to have been Buckley, which was the host of it, right? And I said, what would it be like if veterans from Buckley came in and there wasn't someone to love on them? And they noticed that there was a mayor from Auburn and a mayor from all these different cities, but you weren't there. She goes, oh, you're sliming, she said. Right? Well, anyway, we had the event.
The truth is accountability. A lot of people don't like the truth. Oh my goodness.
I was not about accept and no, but I didn't want them to feel bad. I want them to come to that choice themselves, right? So we built this event up. I had all the mayors. Now this, I don't know, were you here in 2009?
Yes, I was.
Washington?
Yep.
So do you remember anything unusual that happened that, January of 2009?
I think there was a crazy economic crash in 2008.
Right.
And in January 2009. No, I don't remember.
Yeah, the state was underwater.
Oh.
The Puyallup River's overflowing, and the whole, a lot of southern Washington was just underwater, right? So I get to the event. You couldn't go from Puyallup to get to Buckley and Enumclaw and 410 because the Puyallup River had flown over the, Highway 410. And I get there, and Mayor of Auburn comes up. His name is Pete. And Pete says, Rod, I gotta tell you something. You see this beeper? And I go, yeah, Pete, what's up with that beeper? And he goes, Rod, if that beeper goes off, that means the Howard Hanson Dam broke, and I'm going to have to go then. I said, Pete, you're going to be up first, right? And so we had all these mayors kind of talk and address them. Now, what we did, an unusual thing, is I made C-shaped circles where there was an entrance, and people setting in there were World War II against Iraq, against Vietnam. I mixed it up. Intentionally put people in different, because we had forums that they were going to use to interview each other, learn what stuff. Well, anyway, all the mayors are up there talking, and all these got to witness it. Then they went into the breakout, and the breakout really had them, tell us what was good and bad. And this one World War II example, he speaks up, talks about, hey, this truck, got hit and it overturned, and he was the only one that got out of that alive, and how that had impacted him. But he shared, I've never told anyone this story, because we were together as brothers, and we realized that we were meeting each other, but we had something in common and we could share. So his name was Hal, and he goes, Hal. Everybody in the circle says, Hal, you're in the perfect place. It was just awesome. So it kind of blossomed from there. Yeah, blossomed from there into a 501c3 called Vets Meet Vets. We were doing our thing. A couple of years into it, we put on a big concert around 9/11, and pieces of metal, were coming from 9/11 into the state of Washington. Motorcycle group had some great ideas. Some people said we could put on a concert and a show and bring in from the Beach Boys people, and we invested all this money into it, and like anything marketing, if you don't do it right, we ended up with, I think, 5 people that attended. After spending all this money for fog lights and stage and all this stuff. So effectively, we I'll say crashed. Crashed that. I dissolved it and said, I don't know what I'm doing. It's just not. And which brought me to a suicidal state. It was such it was going to be big. I had letters from Senator Murray, and her aide was reading it on stage, and we had all these different artists doing their thing. The show went on. It was extraordinary, right? We were going to turn it into a PBS special, right? We needed the money to do that, which we didn't earn, so therefore that didn't, happen. And that way it was going to get the word out about veteran suicide across the nation, right? So, yeah.
That can be super tough too. Facing negative like that, it's a huge negative, and it will definitely put you in any mental state it wants you to be put in. Like there's no way of bracing against that. And for my personal experience with veteran suicide is horrible. There's so many others around me. I've lost so many people who were dear to me, who were there for me when I was going through the worst times of my life while in the military. I've suffered great loss. I've had moments where my mental integrity was tested. I almost lost my mind when I had some shit going on. See my language back at home.
It's good.
I'm losing it. I was just losing it.
Yep.
And there's nothing that really can get across what it's like to not want to be alive anymore.
Yeah.
To feel so helpless, trapped, over encumbered, however you want to say it, completely taxed mentally and spiritually, honestly, because your spirit is what's breaking, not your mind, not your body. Your spirit is breaking, and that's what will let those suicidal thoughts right in.
Yep. Believing in the lies. Yep. Yeah. And when I grew up, I don't know, TV commercials had like a dairy commercial, and it'd have a little white, angel that happened to have a dairy hat on, right? And over on this side was a red one, meaning a devil on one side, and they're both talking into your ear. Which one do you start listening to? The one that's telling you lies, like not good enough, you're not worthy, right? You're broken, all that kind of stuff. Or do you listen to the one that says you can do it, right? I believe in you, kind of stuff. So we've learned a lot, and with it, as we reformulated, we flew under the wing. And by the way, our nonprofit is, again, the National Alliance to End Veteran Suicide. So if you wanted to see it on the web, clear, you can Google, it'll pop right up. But the acronym is NA, the number 2, EVS.org. So NA2EVS.org. If you go to the About page there, a lot of my stories kind of spelled out on how we got there and how we then flew under the wing of the Veterans Family Fund of America. So Washington State Department of Veteran Affairs, John Lee was the director. This is before Alfie, right? Many know Alfie. John Lee was, and we were teaching together in Eastern Washington at the VFW's yearly convention. He was on stage, I was on stage, and he goes, "Rod, I like what you're doing. Would you like to be able to join forces with our nonprofit?" And I go, "Yeah, that'd be cool, right?" But they weren't ready. He brought it back to the board. They go, "No, we're not ready to take on anything." A board change happened about 2 years later, and then they reinvited us back in. So we did that for a while, and that's where, as I really started to get Vets Meet Vets, which is what we called it in the beginning, didn't speak the mission. Because I was operating with the Warrior Transition Battalion, had a booth on JBLM as they had their organization day of barbecue and frisbee golf and all that stuff. And I'd have these young service members come up and they go, "Is this a dating club for veterans? Right? Vets Meet Vets?" I go, "No, it's not." So anyway, that's where I realized I had to really take on veteran suicide. So the National Alliance to End Veteran Suicide. And Tony.
Tony my God.
Tony helped us give birth because we were doing events at the VA. I'll come back to Tony in a second. And, at the VA at American Lake, we put on Christmas dinner. We had a barbecue in the spring at their nice point there, and just fun stuff. And we also did a winter clothing drive. So Tony comes into the chapel. That's where we had our Vets Meet Vets meetings, and I won't say much, and Tony said, "I know a little bit about suicide." And he then
shared a story on here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I just kind of referred to that. I won't name his last name just to kind of keep it, a little anonymous, but So he came in and we kind of got him connected. In his video, he'll often describe that there was an angel there that day that guided him forward, right? And we were able to get him some education from Landmark, right? Put him through that Landmark forum. It started really. So we're out there in the wintertime doing homeless veteran clothing thing at the Tacoma Mall. Everybody's out there. USO was with us. Everybody's waving flags. We're taking coats. We're taking blankets. We called it Blankets for Hope. And Tony said, we got to get more coats for vets. So he takes off his coat. So he's out there, it's snowing. It was really cold in that December. And he's got no jacket on. So he's like standing like this, right next to him. Someone's holding the Veterans Need coat. And Tony was just, Tony was our founding board president. He inspired us to do that. And, he still loves us. He was with us last night. So one of the things that we gave birth to about a year and a half ago is called Race to Save Veteran Lives. If you take a look in our nation, you've probably come across Relay for Life. That started in Tacoma when a doctor said, cancer is not good. I'm going to go walk around this track, take pledges, and that is where the birth of Relay for Life happened. Well, we gave birth to that, Race to Save Vets, in Tacoma, Lakewood, Tacoma, at Grand Prix Raceway, where we put on a yearly 200-lap Indy-style race. Well, last night we put on a social, and what we did at that social, I used the same form I used back in 2008 with that C-shaped circle to have people go meet 5 other veterans. But it asked them questions like, what service were you in and when? But what program or service helped you the most, right? And what do you need? So that it became real world for people, and they were, just connecting, and it was extraordinary. So we plan to do that monthly, but people can check out, r2svl.org, Race to Save Veteran Lives, .org. And there you'll see we got a ruck march planned, and what we're built is actually a platform that allows all the nonprofits to come collaborate versus be in our own silos, and right. So I'm, as a Christian, I believe in communicating, C word, collaborating, right? All that stuff. So collaboration is built into that Race to Save platform so that we're able to take on projects like the Veterans Family Fund did for me, and I flew under their wing. We brought on Mother Rucker as an example, which is a female veteran building a ruck march, and all about fitness. That's going to be October 1st along that Foothills Trail in the town of Ording. And so all sorts of stuff.
Love it. I love it.
It's fun.
Goodness. And you said something that's essential, and I use that word a lot, but it's an essential word to use, essentially, right?
It is.
I want to be honest.
You're sounding like our vice president there now, Eddie.
Oh yeah. There's something I gotta say. You have to be able to let down these. Human beings are not meant to be on these islands and not ever connect with other ones. Get out in the water, start swimming, talk to other people, interact with other veteran organizations. The idea here is affecting others in a positive way with different avenues, regardless of what it does to our ego. When you're in the veteran world with helping vets, that ego has to diminish to literally nothing. You cannot be prideful. You should be passionate over pride. You should be empathetic over egotistical. You should be, I could come up with a bunch of letters words that attach to them, right? But the point is removing these stop being like silos, like you talked about. It's really important that we do that.
Collaboration is key.
That don't even know. They don't even know about organizations, and that's exactly why I'm doing these episodes, because it's essential that we break down these boundaries, explain what organizations are out there and how they can help others transition, because the transition never ends for a lot of them, and sometimes it ends with a bullet, a pill,
very badly,
or a knife. There's so many different ways, and I don't want to trigger anybody listening who's going through these moments, but just think about for a second how great life would be if you could actually solve your issues or had the tools to do it. And that's what your organization does, and that's what you do as a human being. you give others tools to
And we
navigate life.
and we thought about the tool part when we actually created our focus areas. Einstein's got his theory or had his theory, right? We know that to be EMC squared, right? We came up with ER squared C: education, resources, research, and community. Clearly, in the Vets Meet Vets days, it was all about community with a little bit of education. So we've expanded that. Obviously, if you're familiar with the Nine Lines and
Yes.
the Veteran Resource Fair, we were the nonprofit behind that as it first began. And then we gave birth to Nine Lines, right? We give birth to other organizations as they grow, and they've been under the wing and they know how to fly, and which is wonderful. And look where Nine Lines has gone, just amazing. And
Yes.
we're proud of that, and we're looking for the next one. Now, last night we had STEP supporting the enlisted program. Key was with us. We had Creative Colloquial, if I pronounce that right. They're a reading, writing, poem kind of, and we are building an event in May where veterans will be able to tell their story, actually kind of in front of an audience, and all amazing stuff. Tony with the Veteran Lending Group was with us. They're doing great mortgage and training about veterans and owning their homes. So all of that. So have you look there? But one of the things that's been the tip of our sword for quite some time, we're about to take to Redding, California. We were invited by Simpson University, which is a Christian university. They kept hearing about Operation Veteran Freedom. Now, we did this at JBLM a bunch of times, at the military prison on JBLM. And when the veterans that were in there with the guards having M16s, right, when they heard about freedom, the guards got a little worried. So we had to kind of quiet that name, right? and so we coined the phrase, it's an operator's guide to your brain. Military operator's guide, right? Made sense. So rather than calling it Operation Veteran Freedom in the prison, right, and have the guards freak out, we called it the operator's guide to your brain, all about neuroscience, right? So what we did, is back in January of 2008, just before I took on that mission, the guy that led our workshop to my whole family was a Vietnam Marine. That Vietnam Marine is Jan McHenry. You go look at Operation Veteran Freedom and read a bit about him, but he survived a mass casualty event. Age 18, standing his unit on the top of a hill in the DMZ of Vietnam. This is August 10th, 1969. 100 men were overrun by about 5,000. And it was 95% casualty. 5 walked off the hill, and the colonel is on the radio asking them, says, well, how many of you are left? And they said, sir, we only have 5. He goes, great, you're still a fighting unit. Gonna give you more men, you go back out. Well, he came home with PTS so bad, back then it was shell shock, that he had tremors. If there was any noise, he'd be taking somebody out, choking them out, right? Well, he was drugged to a neuroscience-based workshop from Landmark Education, and it just transformed his life. And he was the one that then learned to teach it, and had trained probably 30,000 people around the world before he finally retired to come be with us to do this workshop at no cost to our service members, veterans, and their families. Now, we extended that to those that provide for our veterans, caregivers as well, but mental health providers, and just extraordinary. So if you take a look, na2evs.org/OVF, Operation Veteran Freedom. And we have one again, 4/1, we're in Redding, California. If you wanted to travel there, great. But on 4/17, since COVID, we broke it apart. We put it on Zoom, and we do like a Monday night 2-hour segment. The next week, 2 more hours, homework in the middle. So it's 4 sessions across 4 weeks. So 2 hours, 2 hours. I invite everyone. If you got any statements in your brain that says you're not good enough, anything that says it was my fault and I'll never be forgiven, whether it be military sexual trauma, whether it be PTS, whatever you got, whatever you think's going on. Now, you don't need to have trauma to be in a workshop. You just want, like I did, a more effective, a more just extraordinary life. So if you're one of those, go sign up for 417's Operation Veteran Freedom. It will change your life. It will be a week, or in this case, 4 days, 4 Mondays that you will remember forever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's some powerful stuff. I'm definitely gonna have to sign up.
Yes, please. I
write that down real
personally
quick.
invite you, Eddie.
I would love to.
Because if you'll be able to experience it, these distinctions, which is again around the brain that you really get in a fun way, you'll be able to share those with others. So
Wow.
all those
That's
that
what this is
like
all
to,
about.
yeah, all of those that like to help others, boy, experience this workshop. It will give you tools. I got one quick story. You got one more
Yeah.
minute? Okay. So remember I mentioned we had done it several times at the prison, the Northwest Joint Regional Correctional Facility on JBLM, which just reopened again, by the way. They went through a remodel and shuttle, but anyway, it's back. So we had done probably 2 workshops, and then I got the idea that I should come back after a month. So Jan leads the workshop, and I'm kind of production, making it happen, but support. And but Jan lives in Spokane, didn't want to bring him over here to go meet with them for an hour. So I decided that I would do a follow-up kind of debrief a month later. So I go back, and there's probably 25 service members in the guard at the door with the M16, and I said, okay, we're going to get going. I'm going to talk about this. And all of a sudden, one of the service members, so again, this was a graduating class of Operation Veteran Freedom 1 month later. And just before I start, this one service member says, wait, Rod, stop. I go, oh, what's he going to say? I'm thinking we screwed up, right? And he goes, I have to tell you the story of Grandpa. So he's probably 30, I'm guessing, right? Maybe late 20s, 30s. And he said, all of the grandkids got together. Grandpa, just loved hunting, and we heard all about that. Grandpa was in Vietnam, and Grandpa still kind of did hunting, but he was okay with it, right? And so the grandkids all got together and bought him a shelter. I think that's the right word. It's all camo. It's got the slots where you can be in the woods and look out, and so you're not seen by the animals, right? And Grandpa apparently had gone in, and with that, being in that contained environment, flashback to Vietnam, totally went south, and was not going hunting anymore. So all the grandkids had been depressed for months. What did they do? We broke Grandpa, right? We were trying to be loving and giving him something we thought he'd just enjoy. He goes, hey, but wait, remember the workshop? Well, I was able to call Grandpa. And where you guys did these things on the board, I said, Grandpa, draw a circle like this, and Grandpa, do this, and whatever. And he goes, I was able to talk to Grandpa over the phone here from the prison and give him the distinction that you guys gave us. And I'm proud to tell you that Grandpa's back hunting again in the shelter.
Wow.
That's what Operation
Those
Veteran
full
Freedom.
circle moments, man.
Full circle.
I get so excited about those because
Isn't
that's where the beauty of life can truly be realized. The impact we have on others. I
Absolutely.
say it often, man. The effect you have on others is life's most valuable currency. There's no $1 million check that you
Right.
can be gifted
Yeah.
that's ever gonna amount to the positive effect you have on a multiple, a huge group of people, being in a room with 2,000 people teaching them or 200 people teaching them how to use this program, and
Right.
hearing all the keyboards click at once. That effect
At once.
is
It's
priceless.
just, yeah, it's priceless. Absolutely. So I challenge everyone, what can you do? Seriously, to get into the lives of our service members. So one is go look at ETS sponsorship. I don't know if you've heard about that. ETS is the term of our, what is it, early termination of service. It's the date when we get out. That's called our ETS date. So the highest spike in veteran suicide right now is 1 year around that ETS date. Can happen before they get out, like come back from wherever and be on base and feel worthless. There's no mission, right? It could be as they get out, no one cares. My family's been abducted by aliens, all that stuff, right? Either way. So how do we combat that? So we created Race to Save Veteran Lives. Hear it differently. It's a race to inspire. We've got 8,000 towns in our nation, right? if just one person stood up, just like Relay for Life did, and stood up and said, I'll create a race to save. Might be a walk on a trail. It might be a 5K run or a 10K run. It might be a bike thing. It might be go-karts. It might be drag cars. If just people would start that, start to build that, we'd call them something extraordinary. We'd call them volunteer champions. The volunteer champion is dubbed personally by me, just like King Arthur would dub a knight, to be lit up and then trained with me, by me, to be able to have the mindset to be able to do that. So I invite anybody out there. And oh, by the way, with this mission, you need not be a veteran to make a difference. So we're
100%.
open to anyone that cares, that has a big heart for our service members, their veterans, and their families.
I love that. I love that. Well, you know what? We're definitely going to have to link up and get some stuff going, because the power of conversation, the power of veteran stories, the power of even stories that just have to be surrounding the veteran community are, it's huge.
Yeah.
This simple conversation is going to have a snowballing effect and
Ripple effect, just
in a beautiful
extraordinary.
way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Eddie, I want to personally invite you from what you do off the deep end. This may or may not work for you, but right here on the air, if you want to pause, you can. I'm going to ask you to become a volunteer champion. And if you need support of a nonprofit to where you're tax deductible and want to work and want to bring in more veterans, we'll be there for you.
Well, I definitely appreciate it, my brother. Let's figure something out, and let's see if we can make a legitimate big difference in the veteran community in this area. Because Lord knows we need it. I've lost too many friends last year to sit on my hands and have this pain, this empty feeling in my heart, and not do something with it. So it's definitely the direction that we're going to be end up going.
Good.
With making differences.
You've got the option of becoming a brand ambassador, for example. You've got the options of becoming that volunteer champion. Could even become a project of the National Alliance to End Veteran Suicide called Off the Deep End. You become the project director. All sorts of things are possible. And if you decide, like Nine Lines did, to become your own charity, we'll help you do that.
You know what? I really would like to figure something out. So we'll definitely have to talk offline about this.
Very good. Well, I extend that invitation, to everyone. If you've got an idea, connect.
Definitely.
If you've got a passion, connect. We'll give you some ideas. Right? Together, everyone achieves miracles.
100%.
100%.
Well, Rob, I really do appreciate your time. I'm so thankful for you, Rod, as a human being, the work you do, the interactions you have with others, the effect that you're having on other people daily, going out of your way. You definitely don't look as old as you say you are.
Right.
You're always doing things for other people. And I think that is the true fountain of youth, is the impact you have on others. And I love the impact you have, my brother. I appreciate your time so much.
Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you very much. And God bless you, and God bless America.
Amen, brother. And you know what? Thank you to all of my listeners. This has been another episode of Off the Deep End podcast. If you like what he's doing, go down to the link in the description and let's get connected. Let's make a difference like we can in every day. You don't have to be a licensed individual to make a difference in life. You don't have to be a veteran to make a difference. You don't have to serve your country to make a difference. All you have to do is have a heart and open it up and take action. Much love, you.
Before we get started today, I want to say thank you for every single like, comment, recommendation, and a very special thank you to my listener support group. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End podcast, please consider checking out the listener support tab on our channel's anchor link. Without you, we would not be able to continue the great work we're doing with these conversations, breaking down boundaries and helping heal each other by sharing our stories, our trials, our tribulations, and how we process them. Let's jump straight into this episode.